Hey, it's week 4, middle of week 4. So we're a little more than halfway through the semester. Um, and you might be at this point be feeling some stress, some anxiety, some maybe you're feeling overwhelmed. Maybe you're in the middle of all kinds of happiness and euphoria because of how great the semester is. Or maybe you're bored. Maybe you're ready for the summer. I don't, we all live in these different emotional states, and sometimes we get so focused on one element of our existence, taking a class or going to high school graduation or working your job, that you forget about all the other states we exist in. We live in a chaos, a chaos that surrounds us with all the different types of states of existence, all the different experiences we have, and we try to make sense of those experiences and that chaos. And on top of that, we also have a whole bunch of stuff happening around us at the same time. World events where, say, one country invades another or one country bombs another. We have things happening in the news. We have heroes that pass away. We have all kinds of stuff happening. I mean, even the weather can be another state of existence that can take us out of our regular feeling of who we are and put us into a new emotional state. We might say that we live within an ebb and flow of existence. That's what the ocean does. It comes into the shore and it goes out from the shore as it goes through its natural cycles each day. We live in an ebb and flow of existence that where we have to understand what it's like to be overwhelmed by existence, and then also understand what it's like to just exist in a very slow time. Because of that, sometimes it's helpful to think in terms of how how can we be? What kind of existence should we experience? This week you had a few different texts. One was an introduction to Stoicism, a philosophy of Stoicism. And that lecture, the video, provided you with some ideas about the ancient Stoics and how they approached their life. Stoicism has at its core this sense that we live in a chaotic universe. We can't control the chaotic universe around us. You can't control what your instructor is going to give you in your next assignment. You can't control whether or not all 4 of your classes decide to give you a test in the same week. You can't control what the weather is going to be tomorrow. You can't control whether or not existence will continue tomorrow. You can't control the news. You can't control people's reactions to you. You can't control even sometimes your own biochemistry that affects your mood. But Stoicism is an attempt to control, to remain steady, to keep focus on what existence is. And so the image on your screen, a rock under the ocean, is kind of an ideal image of Stoicism. You are surrounded, you are drowning, you are within the midst of all this different chaos, and you must stay what you are, and you must exist as you are. Now, a rock doesn't have a whole lot of purpose in life, so it's pretty easy for a rock to continue to exist. But Stoics will say that we as people can continue to exist. We can continue to remain solid no matter what is happening around us. And we do that through a few different virtues. The first is moderation. You exist by living in a moderate state. You don't go too far in any direction of um, anger or of happiness. You don't go too far in any direction of let's just take the example of eating. You don't you don't go crazy with eating. You also don't go crazy with the dieting. You stay within moderation. Because when you stay within moderation, enough of any one experience to maintain you, you don't add more chaos. It is when you move out of moderation that you start to add more chaos to your life. And you can just imagine on a daily basis, you're fine if driving along in your car, but you add some alcohol into that, or you add some road rage into that, or you even add singing along to your favorite song and losing yourself in the music. And all of a sudden, you have more chaos in your life, more chaos in your driving. So, moderation is one of the virtues that Stoicism is based on. Another is the idea of wisdom, of being able to make choices within that chaos that allows you to maintain yourself, your stoic self, so that you can see, okay, I could choose to do this, or I could choose to do that. I could choose to drink something and drive, or I could choose to not drink and drive, or I could choose to listen to my music really loudly, or I could choose to just kind of turn it down and just have it a little bit in the background. Stoicism doesn't require that we remove all happiness or all pleasurable activities. It also doesn't require that we remove all negative reactions or negative activities. It requires that we kind of make choices to stay within that middle of ourselves. That leads us to a sense of courage. I probably have my circles here, or my ovals here in backwards. That leads us to a sense of courage. That if we are going to make wise choices, we also have to stay courageous within those choices. Let's take the example of being a pacifist. A Stoic is a pretty passive person. Doesn't mean they're always passive. Sometimes you must take action, but a Stoic is not going to commit violence if they are staying true to Stoicism. Because violence means you've gotten caught up in some kind of emotional sense, some kind of meaning that is trying to add more to the chaos. So if you are a pacifist, well, it takes an awful lot of courage to remain a pacifist in the state of heightened violence, in a state of chaotic violence. But that courage allows you to continue on being you through the wise choices you make, through the moderation in which you live. And ideally, if we can be stoic, if we can all be stoic, we would live in a world of justice. We would practice a justice that allows us to refine our lives so that we can remain steady, we can remain singular, we can remain whole within the chaos around us. Stoicism is a really long-standing philosophy, but it's also a philosophy that allows us to say, how do we exist in the world? How are we going to be? Well, let's maintain moderation. Let's act with wisdom. Let's act with courage, and let's build justice. I want to move from this idea of Stoicism and think a little bit about how does Stoicism interact with, say, the question of cheating. And this is getting into the counterfactual argument that philosophers like to do. You're sitting in a classroom. You have the opportunity to cheat on an exam. What would be a philosophy of that cheating? Well, maybe we make a rational choice that I could either fail my exam or I could cheat, and that would allow me to exist, keep on existing with the least amount of disruption if I cheated, because then I wouldn't fail. Or maybe we live in a world of realism where we can say, okay, everybody cheats. I cheat, you cheat, we're all going to cheat, so we might as well just cheat. Or we can live in a world of temporality where we forget about our basic beliefs, our basic desire for the world, and we just focus on that one moment and what makes sense within that moment. Or maybe we lose our sense of our epistemic awareness, that is, how we know what we know or what we can feel about what we know. Sometimes cheaters believe that when they cheat, they are actually proving something. That's a question of epistemic awareness. And then maybe we can also expand the question of a philosophy of cheating to ask, is cheating ever ethical? Is it ever a correct moral action to cheat on something, to cheat on somebody, to cheat within something? There may be a way to build a philosophy of cheating, and maybe there's some ways to say that sometimes cheating is a ethical act, it's an epistemic act, it's a realistic act, or maybe there's a way to think, okay, cheating has problems. And what what I would say is that we could approach this through stoicism. Okay, we live in a chaotic world, the chaotic world that has all kinds of expectations of us on purity and perfection, and so at some point in our world we are going to be faced with moral choices or choices on what how to live. The chaos within that world may make it seem like cheating is okay because we've got to exist within that chaos. But a Stoic would say, yes, of course, that that may seem like a way to overcome questions of justice, or maybe it seems like a way to overcome the questions of the madness of the world around you, but it is not moderate. You're not living within moderation and accepting that moderation because you're taking an extreme act within a seemingly chaotic moment. And then that's not wise. You're not taking a wise act when you cheat. And particularly we're talking about like academic cheating, but maybe this is also you are in a relationship and you see this really hot person and you have an opportunity to hook up with them, but you're in a relationship and you got to make a decision about what is the most moderate thing for me to do here. It also takes a lot of courage to stay within that wise, moderate decision because the pressures to do something, to act on something, can be so extreme. A Stoic, I think, would come down into the space of cheating is not a Stoic action. It is not. It is not keeping you away from the chaos. Instead, it is pushing you into the chaos where we can no longer understand what it means to exist in a world where we are all just living in moderation. Because once we start to cheat, we start to question the world around us, question who is cheating, what their motivations are, what is happening. And in order to get ourselves to a space of cheating, we have to have lost respect for that person, that thing, that situation that we are cheating against. When we cheat, we think we are solving an existential problem. But cheating really reveals deep logical confusion in a personal philosophy. Perhaps you live within a metaphysics where you believe there's a spiritual sense of the world. And I cannot imagine a metaphysics that says that cheating is okay. I cannot imagine a God that believes that cheating is okay, unless you are believe in a God of chaos. Maybe a God of chaos would say, okay, go ahead and cheat because, let's make more chaos. But in most metaphysical philosophies, cheating is not going to work. And in epistemology, how we know or how we think we know or how we build a sense of what it becomes to know, a philosophy of knowing, cheating, it makes no sense at all. Because what you are saying you know is not what you know, or what you believe that you're overcoming about what you don't know is is a false sense of knowing. And in epistemology, how we understand what it means to know, we are actually working on the opposite side of knowing. We are working in the world of doubt when cheating happens. And then, of course, ethics. Ethics may be the one space where we might be able to make an ethical argument for cheating. But then if we ask ourselves, okay, it's proper to cheat in this math class because I don't respect the teacher, I don't respect the requirement, I don't respect the school. So cheating is okay because it doesn't matter. There's nothing here that matters to me. If we play that game, then we then start to ask ourselves, okay, at what point do I not matter to somebody else? Do my feelings, my beliefs, my sense of self not matter to somebody else to allow them to cheat on me? I'm bringing this up, of course, because we watched Jennifer Baker's Why Cheat, and Jennifer Baker comes to a sense of how we deal with the question of cheating, and it's very easy for us to say, Do not cheat. Cheating is wrong. But she says that's not a satisfying answer. And it's not a satisfying answer for most students, especially those that are more tempted to cheat. Instead, what she comes to is a sense of Aristotelian ethics, that is, virtue theory. Aristotle has an ethics of virtue, that in order to live a life of happiness and contentment, in order to live a life where we don't question ourselves, we move to virtue and we live by virtue. Now, Stoics, let me go back to the screen. Stoics have virtues, but they don't quite have a virtue theory. You're not living according to these virtues in order to become something. But for Aristotle, you live according to virtues and to the best sense of yourself so that you can attain a world that is better than the one you live in. So Aristotle believes that living by virtue will help us solve the problems of our life. And Jennifer Baker believes that if we can teach students that virtue helps you avoid the pain of embarrassment, of shame, of feeling bad about a situation, then you can start to gain a deeper sense of what it means to study, what it means to learn, what it means to be faithful. Jennifer Baker's argument is a virtue theory argument. And that might be enough for some of us. Maybe that's enough for some of us to say, okay, I want to make sure I'm living a good life. What is a good life? It is by living by these virtues that I've been taught, that I've experienced, that I know. Camus gives us the story of Sisyphus, the dude rolling the rock up the hill, punished by the gods to continue rolling this rock up the hill, only to see it roll back down, and then he's got to roll it up again. That's the only thing he can do in life. It's often presented as a tragic story. Sisyphus made bad decisions in life, and now he is punished from the gods by rolling this rock up the hill. And what Camus does with this is he kind of turns the story on its edge, and he says, look, if that's all you can do in life is roll a rock up the hill and get crushed by the fact that it rolls back down and then have to roll it up again, if that's all you can do, then do it. Live that life. And what he says is ultimately that's an absurd act. Rolling up a rock up a hill is absurd. Seeing it roll back down upon you and seeing it reach the bottom again, that's absurd. And then having to stand up and go and roll it again, it's absurd. And life is absurd. It makes no sense. What Camus would say is this chaos around us that the Stoics write about, this sense of shame around us that Jennifer Baker talks about, or this world that just does not seem to make much sense to us, so we take actions in it that try to make it make sense, like cheating or like studying. Well, it's all absurd. And all we can really do is find joy in our moment. This is how Camus ends his essay, or ends that section on the myth of Sisyphus. I leave Sisyphus at the foot of the mountain. One always finds one's burden again. You will, and I'll just cut off right there. So it doesn't matter what you do. It doesn't matter what you accomplish. It doesn't matter how you win. You will always find the burden again. You will reach another burden, and you will always feel that sense of burden, because that is what life is. Life is this burden, this chaos. And in fact, what Camus gets to at different points, and what the existentialists get to at different points, is that life is death. That's the ultimate end, and that is absurd. So one always finds one's burden again. But Sisyphus teaches the higher fidelity that negates the gods and raises rocks. That is, when we can pay attention to the story of Sisyphus, what we begin to see is all those gods who put that punishment upon us, all that chaos around us, all that absurdity around us, well, we can negate that. And we negate that by focusing on the rock. He too concludes that all is well, because if all you got is the rock, then that's got to be well. This universe henceforth without a master seems to him neither sterile nor futile. It, it, it's not meaningless, and it's not without purpose. Each atom of that stone, each mineral flake of that night-filled mountain in itself forms a world. The struggle itself toward the heights is enough to fill a man's heart. One must imagine Sisyphus happy. Existentialism has its critics, but there is kind of an idea here in the middle of existentialism of finding a way to live in a world where things seem unfair, where things seem stressful, where things seem chaotic, where the gods put upon you too much, or your teachers put upon you too much, or your parents put upon you too much, or your work puts upon you too much, or maybe you yourself put upon you too much. You live in the absurd, and the only way to live in that absurd is to focus on the task of the moment and find joy in it. We have a few approaches here to life. One would be existentialism of Camus. One would be the virtue, living virtuously, of Aristotle and Jennifer Baker. And the other would be the Stoic life of just focusing on living in moderation. And I suppose, depending on your personality and how you want to live, you could pick one of those, or you live by one of those, or maybe you live by a sense of the world of gods and the metaphysics of what a god tells you to do. You make your choices, you live your life. I just wanted to present that this week, of course, because we are a little more than halfway through the semester and it's a stressful time, and because we are taking our first exam this week. So I want to present this idea of choosing a way to live, but maybe doing it philosophically. Maybe there's a purpose in this philosophy that helps you think about how you are going to live. A few reminders, course updates. We've got 3 weeks left after this week. That's it. Thus far, I've actually gotten a couple emails from people who are worried about their grades because the stuff we talked about early in the semester about how I approach grades, that kind of gets a little distant at this point because you're in the middle of the semester and your math class is giving you grades every single day, or your biology lab is you've had 3 tests already and you know what your grade is. But that's not the way philosophy often works. It's not the way I work. This 3 weeks left, you may be entering into this moment of chaos. What's happening? I want to remind you that my course is based on your participation and engagement, the ways you do the course, the ways you roll the rock up the hill. So I've graded one journal to give you a sense of how that journal is going to go, and I'm going to grade another one, probably this week's journal, to give you a sense of how you're doing. And then you've got your discussion boards. I don't grade those individually. Some teachers do. I do not. For me, that's just like you coming into class and talking. It's just part of the participation. You've got your project that you're working on, and you should be thinking about that project and where that's going. That's another grade. And then you've got your exams grade. Those are working. You've got to take your first exam this week before Monday at 12 p.m. I believe is it 11:59 or 12 p.m.? I don't remember. Make sure you check the date on time on when that exam closes. We're rolling along. We're rolling our rock up the hill, and hopefully it's not crushing us a whole lot when it comes back down. But there's a lot to do here, and it's easy to get stressed out, to get angry, to get resentful, to resist what is happening or what you're being asked to do. I'm going to ask you to stay focused. Maybe the best way to stay focused is by finding the way you want to live and by practicing that. But hopefully, in the end, what you end up finding is a joy in the process. because that's what life is ultimately, is the process of getting through it. Find joy. Do a great job on your work this week, and on the exam, and maybe think about some ethics and some metaphysics and some epistemology as you're doing that exam, and how you want to approach it in a way that allows you to stay true to yourself. And we'll see you next week.